Hello and welcome to the Birthing Conscious Humans podcast. And this morning I'm speaking with my beautiful friend Sacha Heath, who is a meditation coach. Sacha, you are a yoga instructor. You are an amazing parent to Rafael, which is why we're here today, and we're going to be talking about conscious parenting. So I know your time is so precious, so thank you for sharing it with us for this podcast.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah. And because you have such a sort of long-term, sustained, dedicated practice, long before you had Rafael and a family, I'm very curious to kind of put the question to you in particular about conscious parenting. You know, what does this big word conscious even mean? And without creating an even bigger burden as a parent to kind of feel that, oh, as well as being a good parent, I'm also going to be a conscious parent.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So what does sort of conscious parenting feel like for you? How would you grasp the word?
Well, firstly, I'm really happy to be here, so thank you so much for finding the time to include me. And yeah, it's a big title. What does it mean to be a conscious parent? The short answer is I don't really know. I think every day it means something different. And I also think it's really important to make the distinction. For me, if I use this term to be a conscious parent, I'm really looking at it from as a way to look at myself and my own behavior and my own focus with my son. I think we can't use this as a term to judge other people by, and in fact I think that is a kind of opposite to what it means to be conscious anyway. So to be really clear, this isn't about judging anybody or any other styles of parenting, but that maybe it can be used as a way to kind of go deeper into whatever it is that you're already doing with your family. For me, to be a conscious parent means to be really present with my son. I feel like we live in a world that is so geared to distract us now. Social media and emails and TV and life
and telephone
and everything is becoming filled with more and more and more and more. And actually how many of the demands on our time are kind of insidious. You don't notice. It might just be one text, it might be 10 words. But in that 10 words you heard your phone go off, you picked it up, you looked at it, and that whole time, what's your baby doing? Or what's your child doing? And if that happens 200 times across a day, then that's big moments. That's a big chunk of your life that you're unplugged from, and maybe not fully conscious of what's happening with your child or with me, with my child. So for me, presence is something that I really look to bring as much as possible. And that doesn't mean kind of putting the baby under a microscope and watching everything they're doing. But that I can feel when my heart is really open and in connection with my son, and I'm fully there, and that whatever happens, if something critical happens, because for me, you know, also I'm the mother of a 10-month-old, so there's a whole parenting journey ahead of me that I have no idea about. But with this baby stage, there is so much support needed for the baby that, to be conscious means to be fully there when I'm with my son, and then to make sure when I'm not with my son that there's someone else who can be there as fully there as I would be. So this is a big one.
I'm sure, you know, Rafael feels when you are fully present or not, and he has his ways of testing to see if you're fully present or not.
We were joking when he was younger, like babies seem to be able to smell food, so if you're distracted by that, sex,
if you're distracted by
they can smell intimacy if you're distracted by that. They can smell relaxation. They can smell the minute that you have a minute to yourself. That's when they wake up and kind of cause havoc. So and then on the flip side, I think to be conscious for me also means to be conscious of my emotions and where I'm coming from, and not to make that wrong if I'm feeling angry or sad or tired. But there are so many waves of emotions, especially being a first-time mum of a young baby, that to be aware of what I'm bringing into the room with me whenever I'm with my son.
Yeah. Which is a practice you would have, this sort of self-reflective practice would have been something that you'd already been doing before conceiving Rafael.
Well, yeah, for me I've been practicing yoga and singing mantras since I was a child. So I think it's about 22 years now that I've been practicing yoga and mantras. And it's interesting because with these practices, as much as yoga works with the body, and that's beautiful, and mantras work with the voice, and that's beautiful, the aim is to realign myself with consciousness, whatever that means. For me, that word, it's too big to define, hence we can't really talk about what it is to be a conscious parent or consciousness, because the implications of it could be so vast. But I think as much as we can't describe it, we can feel it. I can feel it when someone's being conscious of me. I can feel it when I'm being conscious with my son or with anybody else.
Being present.
And so I'm sure the practices have they've changed the way I do everything in life, and subtly and slowly, and not all the time. But I'm even conscious of when I'm not conscious.
And I think that's the thing. And my next question was going to be, how easy are you on yourself when you're not conscious? Like,
what day is it? What time is it?
Because I'm sure that, over sort of practicing wanting to be present and to be conscious, and I'm sure some days you don't have time to do yoga or anything, it's just about, just getting through the day. And yet, because you've had a practice long term, there's sort of, in those moments, you trust the practice that you've put in previous years.
And I really took it as, within yoga, the system of yoga, there are so many different, they call them branches or limbs, and one of the forms of yoga is karma yoga, and that's the yoga of activity. So like Gandhi is considered to be a great karma yogi because of all the political work that he did, and there's this concept of seva, to do work as a form of divine service. So literally on the days that I've not been able to do my yoga practice, and theoretically every day, but it feels particularly present for me if I haven't been able to ground myself in my practice. Because for me it's a pleasure, and I relax, and I feel like I come back to who I really am when I'm doing my practice, and the rest of the time I'm going a bit rogue.
Because I can imagine it can be, if you're sort of you're a new mom or a new dad, and then you suddenly want to try and get that practice going at that stage of parenting, can be really overwhelming, because suddenly you've got another thing to achieve.
You don't need any more shoulds. You don't need any more. I mean, it can be a lovely thing to do, and if you can take even 10 minutes, 20 minutes, if you enjoy to do yoga or singing, or if you can carve that time out for yourself, then good for you, and go for it. But if you can't, then I've really been doing that. And so for me, like, it's, if I'm feeding him, it sounds really flowery, but this is the truth of where I try and come from. I'll be feeding him as if I have a little incarnation of the divine sitting in front of me that I have to feed. And so then that's my meditation practice, is to feed the little Buddha in front of me. And if I'm playing with him, then play with him as if he's an element of the divine. And theoretically, I would love to deal with my friends as if they're an element of the divine, and the bread man, and the aim is to expand this as much as possible. But I especially feeding, I find, whether it's breastfeeding or feeding him that he's eating food, it's a clear moment that has a kind of a beginning and an end, and I can remember often in that moment to kind of really be conscious here. I suppose also there's like moments when there's a slight risk, like at the moment he's pretty good at eating, but occasionally he'll choke, for instance. So it's easy to be present because there's a safety element to it that really brings me into the here and now, and to be fully with him. So I like to really try and feel that I'm still in my bigger yoga practice of connecting with consciousness through my baby. And that's been really important for me, because I haven't been able to do as much yoga as I would have liked some days. And I find as soon as I've had a routine going, I remember at one point I was getting up, even when I was getting up all night, I would wake up at 5:30 in the morning, and go down and do half an hour of yoga before he woke up at 6. Just because I needed to so much, because it made such a big difference.
Because it was what was familiar also, and you were coming back to what you knew.
And it was 30 minutes for me.
Yeah.
It was 30 minutes just for me to be myself and to get that slight yoga high. I imagine runners have the same, or that them can carry me through my day. And then it was a real kind of shock for me when the next phase happened and I wasn't able to do that. But it felt like something really big had been taken away. And then really trying to reframe it, that it's a curious one as well, because the path of yoga is historically very masculine. There aren't many writings about yoga saints who are females, and certainly not who are householders and who are mothers. There are some, but they're hard to find.
So what does the practice look like that? And I think the example you brought in earlier, which I think, anyone listening who doesn't have a committed yoga practice, let's say, in the feeding Rafael, or
bathing is another
bathing, absolutely. So in that moment where the bath isn't just about washing baby, that could actually become a small a ritual or a ceremony or a learning process for baby that both parent and child can enjoy.
Absolutely.
And invite so much pleasure into the being together, that you sort of, you don't have to carve another half an hour to do your yoga practice or to get to the yoga studio. It becomes part of the stuff you've got to do
and
every day.
And to value that as highly. And that's been part of the work, to really value that as much. And you're not getting maybe the same benefits in your body, but that if you're on a spiritual trip and that's what you like to consider that you're doing, then to really value these little sacred moments just as much as you would your own practice.
Because I do think that most parents actually want to do what's best for their baby and be the best self they can be, but obviously when you're tired and you're triggered or times are hard, the practice of that realistically gets more difficult. So sort of engaging with that self-reflective practice of where am I at emotionally, having a good either partnership or friendship or network of people that you can sort of, or trust yourself to do the reflective practice with. I know from my experience makes a huge difference on the baby's experience. So if we're looking at birth from a baby's perspective, the extent to which a parent owns up to their emotional well-being, their physical or spiritual well-being, allows baby the space to be more of who they are, rather than being sort of enveloped by, a parent's way of seeing or way of being or sort of projection and all of that.
And I think, it's an interesting one, because on the one, I think often about my mother's experience having me, because she had a very extremely hard journey and didn't have a stable home and didn't have a stable income and did it pretty much all on her own. And she didn't, the internet wasn't around then, so she couldn't even do a YouTube yoga class at 5:30 in the morning like I can. She didn't have the same support network around her. And if you're in a really hard situation, it's a different story. There has to be an understanding that before even conscious parenting comes on the agenda, there's just some kind of self-care, finding some way to give yourself what you need, and understanding that you're really serving your baby when you do that, because if you're not feeling good within yourself, then you can still be a great parent, but you'll have less fun, and for sure it will colour the baby's experience one way or another.
Absolutely.
So to find ways of being supported, because it's so damn hard. I had a clue, but I didn't. I think you can't know until you've been in the trenches of it, and it's crazy how much changes for the baby.
And do you think that, my first question would be, do you think that your practice, your spiritual practice, your dedication to being yourself, let's say, has helped you as a parent? And what about those moments where you self-doubt, which are completely natural? Do you tend to be harder on yourself because you know that you've got to practice, so you should be better at dealing with the negative side of things, or?
I feel my practice has really enabled me to remember that there is a here and now. And to, like, even things, simple things, like we live near a church, and when the bell rings, it rings on the hour and half an hour. I try, I don't always, but if I catch myself and I hear it ring, I'll try and take 3 breaths and just notice being here now.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just coming into my body and noticing, what am I seeing, what am I hearing, what am I smelling, what am I tasting? And I could even be still talking to somebody, but just suddenly coming back into the here and now.
And where's my breath?
And it's so simple. We can flower things up and make them very complicated. Yeah. You don't need to be bending yourself into a pretzel to be a more conscious person.
Exactly.
It's really just about coming back into the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
So for sure, my practice has given me that awareness of what a gift that is to really be here now, and given me many little tricks of reminding myself to come back, and more on the level of okay, so then you can use this as a stick to
and I didn't do that, and I wasn't aware, and I didn't practice,
I wasn't here and now, and I'm in
the
future, and again, this gets a little bit more complex, but I'm feeling now I can really feel the difference between my consciousness, my connection with the universe, and my personality. Yeah. And my personality, she's a bit crazy. She's doing her own thing out there. She has a high moment, she has her low moments. I've been almost having, do you remember that Shaggy pop song that It Wasn't Me? And every now and then now, when I can catch myself really kind of dropping the ball or behaving in a way that I wouldn't want to so much, or having a hard day, a part of me can be like, it wasn't me. Like, really, the real me was as much in love in the universe as anything. And my personality is a personality.
So you can
it's doing its best.
It's sort of saying, oh God.
And even if I catch myself being hard on myself, then that's still my personality. Just running a story.
Doing its
thing. I'm finding if it all depends how big the perspective is that I look at my life from, and if I'm really in there and getting stuck in the minutiae of it, it's very easy to be hard on oneself. But if I can zoom back enough to just realise I'm just a personality in the world, doing my best, and I'm also maybe a spirit connected to everything, then it becomes much easier to
because having a mom experience.
Having a mom experience.
Yeah. What having the privilege and the pleasure of spending time around you and Rafael, I noticed there are little things that you do that you might, I don't know if you realise to what extent you realise that you're doing them. And I think you alluded to it before, where you were saying, we create little inner tricks of our own. They're not, nobody's going to tell, not even YouTube probably, of, tuning into the clock, of taking that as a time to check in, or while washing the dishes, let's say, of being more present. What I've seen, because of your own awareness of your presence in time, you also bring that in your engagement with Rafael. So I see that when you are present with Rafael, you allow him the same presence of being. So that he's not hurried or rushed. He has enough time relevant to his developmental stage to sort of, okay, where is this either playtime or feeding, where is it going to go? Is it going to go this way, or is it going to go that way? And that's where I see how Rafael is developing into also a conscious human, in that he's allowed the time to be present with himself, rather than sort of chased left, right and centre, or carried left. He's not carried or, brought with. He kind of feels that he's coming with you in his time, and he kind of feels that. That's my vision of it.
I hope that. So it's lovely that you say that. I think it's a paradox in that kind of happy mama, happy baby, but also happy baby, happy mama. So if nothing else, he has taught me, if I don't do things in a way that serves him, then he's not as happy, and then I'm not as happy. So the less stressful route is the one that really
works for everyone,
but especially for him. Like for me, it's if I can carve out a few windows of time that I can have a little bit of me time most days, let's say, whatever that means, whether it's a long bath or a yoga practice, a piece of chocolate with a friend, this is beautiful. But on the flip side, I can rationalize things. I have the ability to put my needs second, to think about things, to know why I can't get something. He doesn't know that yet. He hasn't learned that yet. And so it's much easier for me to watch him and to kind of go with his flow and surrender to that. Than it is for me to try and enforce anything. And it's so beautiful. Like, it's really fun to enter his world and to see what a baby can do.
Spot on, Sacha. I think, another part of this, let's say, conscious parenting or conscious anything is to drop into, okay, what am I seeing, feeling, hearing, sensing in this moment in time for myself? And the more clearer you get for myself or oneself, it sort of gets easier to start seeing things from another's perspective. Okay, what does that look like for Sacha? What does that look like for Rafael? And I think this is where we've been coming at it for this podcast, the Birthing Conscious Humans podcast. What does the experience look like from a baby's perspective? So my mama is trusting me, my mama is giving me time, or my mama is present, for example. And what I've also noticed, if you don't mind my saying so, is this sort of secure attachment phase that Rafael is going through. He's a boy that feels comfortable to be with other people. And because he's just a sociable baby. No, I have this sense that because of your commitment to being present, that's created a security in Rafael to know that you're present even if you're not physically present. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying, but
and again, I hope that. Like, I wish that for him.
I definitely see that.
I hope on some, at least some level, he feels that. But yeah, I also feel like I don't know if I can even claim that. Like, he's just a really nice guy. And I think all mothers love their babies, and all mothers think that their baby is just the best baby. But Maya really is the best baby. He's a nice guy, and the amount of people, for those of you listening, I run accommodation and we do retreats, and people stay with us, and the amount of guys, especially men, who've said, like, if I knew I could have a baby like Rafael, then I'd have a baby tomorrow. And it's like, oh.
Yeah.
So I hope that some of what I've done has contributed to that. But I also think it's, depending on how you look at it, it's the luck of the draw, or also the karma of the being.
Yeah, and there is the mystery.
And
there is the mystery, for sure.
I don't want a parent out there who's got a more difficult baby to feel like that
it's all her responsibility,
that they've done something wrong,
absolutely,
because it's not necessarily the case.
And this is what we talked about a little bit with Donna in an earlier conversation about conscious conception, that it's not just about mom, it's also about dad, and also the third being that is the child, that also has their own personality and presence and choice in all of this, for sure. But I do feel that we're entering we're evolving as human beings. We are parenting differently. The times are asking us to be more present. Perhaps because we've got less time, so how can I make the most of the time that I've got? So what are the new skills that we are developing in order to be with our children in a more present way, and how does that affect them when we can be?
I think one of my number one tools is really to be very mindful of how I use any digital devices around him. Even when he was a very young baby, for myself, I felt like I didn't really want him staring at a screen as a newborn. I didn't really want to be watching TV with him as a newborn even, which is quite strict by modern standards, so I wouldn't put that onto anyone else, but that was how I felt. And then I felt even that if I was watching something, to be really careful what it is. Rafael's daddy, Ben, loves zombies. He loves
right.
He loves zombie stuff. He loves like The Walking Dead. Like he loves these zombie things. I can't get down with it at all. But he joked. I think he was joking. Maybe he wasn't even joking. I remember I was teaching a singing lesson when Rafael was really young, and I just fed him, and he was just asleep in Ben's arms for like half an hour or 45 minutes. And Ben said like, "Oh, watch an episode of The Walking Dead," and I was like, "You're not watching zombies tearing people apart, right, baby? Like, what are you doing?" But he was like, "He's a baby, he doesn't know." And it's like, no, like for me as a mother, it didn't feel right for my son. I wanted to create an environment within myself and around him that was as peaceful and harmonious as possible. But beyond that, beyond the actual content of what we're looking at on our screens, just having the presence to be fully there. So like I said earlier about, it's very easy for a whole day to get taken up with emails and messages, and at least for me it is. And so I try as much as possible not to use my phone when I'm sole care of my baby. And I'm trying to get back into the routine that has really served me in the past of checking my phone and my emails kind of twice a day. And I do it at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, and to allow myself to kind of be not accessible to other people by phone in the gaps in between, because I want to prioritize being here now with my baby and the people in my direct environment, rather than always being available to everyone all the time, which I think is a modern expectation. I don't think we've ever had that kind of pressure before. So that has felt really important for me, of just to check myself. How am I using my phone, and am I prioritizing this invisible being on the other side of the world over my child?
Especially now, especially when more people are working from home. You know, the digital era is definitely 100% in the house, and which is, you know, it's beyond the 5G conversation. It's about how we use the technology.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I think you sort of do unconsciously, but you do them so gently and with grace, are clear borders and boundaries somehow. Like there are practices that you have during the day that I know with other families that I've worked with would seem really hard to achieve, and yet you do them in a way that feels effortless.
I don't know what they are.
For example, I've seen you when potty training, counting backwards, like allowing time, like giving your child signals so that he knows the next step is coming up. And in order to do that means that you have the presence in you to even do that. To slow yourself down enough to give your child the time that you did.
Yeah, I enjoyed to do that. I'm trying to think, little things. So for us, again, we're doing elimination communication, which I had no idea about before. And then I saw it when I was pregnant on YouTube and thought, yeah, right, you can potty train a newborn baby. Good luck. And then I thought, I'll try it, but I had no hopes it was actually going to work. But actually it's working really well for us. So Rafael is potty trained-ish at 10 months. And that takes a certain presence now to look at his face and to go, we say now, it's a code brown. He's doing a poo, it's a code brown, quick. Get the potty, get to the toilet. And so having that awareness, I think, really helps. And again,
to notice the subtlety of the cues.
They're not even that subtle.
Or smelly.
It's a face. His whole face goes puce at the moment. Like it's not even subtle anymore. He's telling us loud and clear. But even little things, like before I put his t-shirt on or put anything over his head, I do like a little game where I look through the neck hole with him and make him smile, and then it goes over his head, and I feel when he knows what I'm doing next, then he can get down with it easier.
And he feels seen, he feels respected. You know, mummy's, I mean, he might not know that cognitively, but emotionally he's aware that he's being seen and respected.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think.
And it's with all of these things, there are two beautiful sides to it. On the one hand, we can hope that if we're going through things and trying to do them as consciously as we can, then it's going to have a beautiful and positive effect on the baby. But also, happy baby, happy mama. So from a very selfish perspective, if I play these little games with him, he's happier, and therefore my day is easier. So it's there's no downsides to it for me, these little things.
I've got all these amazing conversations that I'd like to have with you, Sacha, and lots of questions, but there's one I'd really like to ask before closing the conversation today is, I'm sure that as a mother, you have all these natural sort of fears, anxieties about, how's his development and how's the future going to be, or is he well, or he rolled over and bumped his head, or he's, which sort of in the moment, I'm sure they, uncomfortable feelings arise. And how do you manage to not, how can I put it, not project your fears on your baby and sort of allow trusting Rafael to be who he's meant to be rather than sort of who you want him to be? I don't know if that's
I think you kind of said the answer. Like it comes down to always trusting Rafael to be who he needs to be, and trusting that I've been called to be his parent in this moment, right here, right now, for this reason. That even if he falls over and bumps his head, that somehow that's been part of the unfolding of me doing my best.
And it's part of his experience. We talked about it a little bit earlier today, that, as a mother, you're doing the best that you can. We haven't talked about Ben today, and I'll be talking with
other than zombies.
Bless him. So we're talking about Ben because he's a lot of credit to be given. So absolutely. So deliberately haven't spoken about Ben in this conversation. So you do the best that you can. Ben does the best that he can, and then there's Rafael, who obviously on some level is making choices for himself and his own experience.
Yeah, right.
Which sort of, I hope, lightens the
the
responsibility.
Yeah, I trust in that. Yeah. I can't remember. There was a certain philosopher that said the most important decision that we make in our life is whether the world is benevolent or malevolent.
Yeah.
Is the world working for you, or is it working against you?
Yeah.
And for me, I really believe and I hope that the world is kind of working for us, that even the really crappy, hard things that happen, we can extract a beautiful lesson from them, and we can make almost anything work for us if we're willing to really do the work. Yeah. And I trust that. I trust that life is bringing us all to the place that we need to be to do what we need to do. And
that's a real fundamental value that you've just shared, Sacha.
And that's the antidote to the fears. And in truth, some of them I haven't spent that much time in fear. I thought before having him that I would be really freaking out about all kinds of stuff. And I found for the most part, I haven't been that freaked out. Other than I don't like it when he's sick. He's had a couple of colds, and the first cold, it's just like, oh, is he okay? And but getting through that. But even in those moments, just feeling like he's okay. Yeah. I can feel in my heart this isn't the really serious thing. We're just gonna have to ride it out, and trusting that life is working for the good of us all, and that we'll make it through. And I think slowing down, breathing, coming back into the here and now rather than getting into the future of what might happen or the past of what went wrong, and just being like, we're all okay right here, right now. And that's very anchoring for me.
Beautiful, Sacha. I think that's a really beautiful way to just close and be present in the moment. I think if anyone wanted to experience you and Rafael firsthand as a family, they could come and stay with you here in Arila's Corfu and see for yourself, guys. And you also have some beautiful teachings and yoga classes online, I believe.
Yogawithsasha.com.
Yogawithsasha.com. And you're also an amazing coach that I've been, the benefit of. So at the end of the video and the podcast recording, I'll also add your website address
Thank
so people
you.
can get hold of you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being an amazing mom to Rafael.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for all the kind things that you've said. Just doing my best.
Yes.
That's it, isn't it, really?
Thank you for listening in, and see you next week.